With you all, and I would do video except that my internet has been very slow these days, and so I don't want to distract from that or cause any trouble. Now, Google Slides, where is the view as a slideshow? Oh,
In the
here we
upper
go.
right-hand corner. Very nice.
Okay, here we are. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. My name is Leslie Redmond, and I'm with my colleague, Dr. Veronica Howard, and we are both at the University of Alaska, Anchorage, and we will be presenting on students as OER, or Open Educational Resource Creators, the ultimate engagement activity. Some housekeeping before we get started. If you would like to save this presentation for viewing later, you can scan the QR code in the bottom right corner of the slide. You can also follow the bit.ly link. I also want to say I am experiencing some severe allergies this week, so I might sound a little congested. So if I'm unclear on anything or you can't hear me clearly, please just comment in the chat box if you want me to repeat something or go back to something. Now, I want to set the stage a little bit before getting into our main topic as students as OER creators, because I'm going to be weaving together a few different issues that led us to this concept in the first place. Dr. Howard and I are faculty at the University of Alaska Anchorage, or UAA, which is part of the larger University of Alaska system, which consists of 3 main campuses, the other 2 being in Fairbanks and Southeast, and 13 community campuses. And these can be thousands of miles apart. And you can see here on this map, this overlay of the state of Alaska over the lower 48. And you can see that it's quite a lot of landmass that we're working with. And we have students in all of these different communities. And to meet the needs of those students, UAA has 126 of over 500 of their degree programs that are offered entirely online, which really helps with access to the classes, but it actually doesn't solve everything. Our campuses are quite remote, and with remoteness comes connectivity issues. This image that just popped up on your screen, this is in Kotzebue. This is a village in up near the Arctic Circle in Alaska, and students here can experience some real challenges connecting to the internet and joining online classes. The internet connection can be slow. Students use satellite phones sometimes to connect. Dr. Howard herself has had some students from down here in the lower left-hand corner, the Aleutian Islands, where her student actually had a speed of 17 kilobits per second, and it would take her 4 hours just to play a 5-minute video. So the common problems that students have with online classes, we usually talk about the issue of how do we encourage student engagement with online classes. Those are amplified in our situation. And the common solutions that are suggested for student engagement, such as synchronous classes, etc., won't necessarily work in our situation. So that being because, students with such slow internet or low connectivity can't always be able to join a synchronous class or relied upon to be able to be there at a certain time and get the same benefit as all the students. And we definitely want equity for all of our students and access. So our first question is, how do we solve this problem? So that's problem number 1, is this distance learning and increasing student engagement in our unique situation. To introduce problem number 2, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Dietetics and Nutrition program at UAA, which is the department in which I teach. We are a nationally accredited program. We train entry-level dietitians and nutritionists. And because of those issues I spoke about on the previous slide, both of our bachelor's and graduate programs are offered entirely online. And the pros that come with that include access to high quality education, flexibility in schedule, students develop self-discipline and time management, but there are of course those cons, that little to no face-to-face interaction, there's challenge with that learner engagement. And here's problem number 2 to our topic here, is that it's still expensive. And usually that's one of the pros associated with online learning, is that it can be more affordable than face-to-face classes or on campus, but it is still expensive. And we know that the college demographic is changing. Most of our dietetic students work at least part-time. Many have families to support, and the cost of college is a significant burden to them. So this is still expensive. And then here at the bottom, we have some additional challenges, which I know are not unique to dietetics and nutrition. So maybe as I talk about it, you can think about your own disciplines and how this would apply. But there are those higher level, very subject-specific classes that one can be very difficult, so students might have to take them repeatedly and therefore increase cost. But also there's additional expenses because there are very specific student learning outcomes, oftentimes necessitated from the accreditation organization. And those topics, while maybe not the focus of the class, might require purchase of additional expensive materials. And the example that I'm going to use is for our advanced nutrition class, where we talk about a subject of nutritional genomics. And it's this particular subject that is required through our accrediting organization, but it's not the focus of the class. And textbooks, the normal textbook doesn't cover it. So you're looking at expensive options on how do I cover this material, what is available out there for my students. And to better understand that cost burden and to identify some specific areas where we as faculty might be able to help, I did a quick cost breakdown for some potential cost savings. Now, as I mentioned, this advanced nutrition class, we do have a textbook. It's about $100, but there is no chapter dedicated to nutritional genomics. So if you look to find a book on nutritional genomics, the textbooks are about $360. And they're all new. Nutritional genomics is a newer field. It's rapidly developing. And so you really do want to get those newer versions of the textbooks because, you know, some subjects you can get a couple versions back and it's okay because not much has changed. But in this field, there is a lot of change. And so you don't necessarily want to rely on those used versions or older versions. You want to get that new book. So that's expensive. Some other costs associated with this: our bachelor's degree program at UAA is about $27,000 per year for an in-state student. Dietetic students then have to complete a 1,200-hour unpaid accredited internship, and at UAA this comes to about $28,000. They then sit for a national registration exam for dietitians. That's $200. Hopefully they pass on the first time. If they don't, they have to take it again and pay again. And then starting in 2024, our accrediting body will require now a master's degree from an accredited program in order to be a dietitian. And while this is great for the profession, it's not so great for student cost burden. So this at UAA, our one-year master's program in dietetics, comes to almost $16,000. And when you add that up, a grand total of $150,000. And I can tell you from experience, that is not reflective of what you can expect to earn in this field. So if we as faculty really want to support our student success, if we want to identify ways to increase engagement and decrease cost, one potential solution is through the use of open educational resources. And I'm actually going to pass it to Dr. Howard now, who will discuss a bit more of the financial barriers and also introduce OER as a possible solution. And Dr. Howard, if you just let me know when to switch the slides, and we'll continue on.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And thank you so much for having us. Like Leslie mentioned, we are going to be talking about the value of OER, and we can go ahead and switch that now. So we have the responsibility of training Alaska's future professionals. We grow our own, we train our own, but we can't ignore the fact that we have both geographical barriers, which Dr. Redmond mentioned. We also have significant financial barriers for our students. And we know from some internal data that 41% of students who left the university in 2016 reported that they did so because of family and financial reasons. That number in 2016 was up 14% from 2012, and we expect that when we run this particular survey again in 2020, that the number will be even higher, given some financial challenges that we've had in the state. It's difficult to grapple with the fact that costs and the cost of education disproportionately affect students who have the highest unmet financial need. And so these are going to be students who are first generation students. These are going to be students from historically minoritized backgrounds. These are going to be part-time students who are already struggling to make college work for them, despite the fact that they are working full time. And we know that the cost of educational materials is a significant challenge, it's a significant barrier for our students. If we could jump to the next slide. We know from looking at data from colleagues, for instance, this infographic comes from San Francisco State University, that the cost of books and educational materials is a significant challenge for students. It also causes a substantial amount of stress. So, 4 out of 5 students report that they are experiencing significant stress because of the cost of their educational materials. We know that over half of students will do their best to not purchase the textbook if they can choose not to. And when students are making the decision of whether or not to purchase their textbook, they're looking at things like, am I going to purchase my text, or am I going to pay rent? Am I going to buy groceries? Am I going to take care of my family? We know, if we can go to the next slide also, that the students who cannot make that equation work are the students who are most likely to not successfully complete college. Unfortunately, students who don't complete college are more than 50% more likely to say that the cost of their textbook materials was a major financial barrier. And these are the students, bear in mind, that likely were using financial aid to be successful. Next slide. Students can't learn from materials that they can't afford. Next slide. And if our students can't learn, if they don't have those materials, there's no way that they're going to be able to be successful and to succeed in our courses, which is why Dr. Redmond and I want to talk to you today about open educational resources. So next slide. If you've never heard of OERs before, open educational resources are learning, teaching, and research materials that can be in any format or any medium. But what makes them special is that the materials are licensed so that they either fall in the public domain or they've been shared under an open license. And that allows the user to access and reuse, to repurpose and adapt those materials, and then to redistribute those materials to others. And they can take a variety of different formats. Next slide, please. We've seen OERs that range from small course elements like textbooks or videos or small bits of material, all the way up to large course shelves. Like MIT OpenCourseware actually packages and makes some of their courses available, from syllabus to tests to all of the things that you would need to be successful. We also know from the literature that OERs can support student learning. Next slide. I want to share with you just a couple of studies that talk about the impact of OERs on student performance. First, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Fischer and colleagues from 2015. This is one of the largest studies that has ever been conducted, at least, from 2015 onward. And the researchers here evaluated the performance of over 16,000 students across 10 different institutions. And they were evaluating what happens to student performance in courses before and after those courses move to OER. The researchers, using archival data, evaluated what proportion of students were earning passing grades, what was the student's overall course grade on a 4-point scale, how many students were completing the course, and what were the students' course loads like before and after, with the hypothesis that if students could afford to take more courses, then they might. Next slide. And Fischer and colleagues report actually that for the most part, there's not a significant amount of difference in student performance in terms of grades and passing grades. For the most part, there was no difference between using commercial materials and open materials. So it's not an issue of quality because students are still succeeding. In a few courses, students do better with OER. In one course, students did better with the commercial materials. What's especially interesting is the withdrawal rate, or the extent to which students persist in the course. With commercial materials or traditional textbooks, 1 in 5 students drops out of the course. When using OER, only 6% of students drop out of the course. And supporting that hypothesis, students take more credits when they're using OER, almost as if having more money allows them to take more classes, which then allows them to graduate faster. Next slide. There were some limitations in the Fischer study, specifically that they didn't look at the variables associated with the students most likely to struggle in college. So Colvard and colleagues in 2018 replicated this study with a systematic evaluation of over 21,000 students across the University of Georgia system, using that same kind of paradigm of before and after OER adoption. These researchers evaluated, again, the overall course grade and those DFW grades. They also looked at specific variables like student eligibility, Pell eligibility. That's typically a marker of student financial need. They looked at student enrollment density, whether or not the students were full-time or part-time, and they also looked at specific student demographics. Next slide. And Colvard and colleagues report that, for the most part, using OERs improves student performance. Not only, upper left-hand corner, do students who are Pell eligible perform better, all students perform better. We also see, upper right-hand corner, that all students perform better when using OER, but non-white students perform just as well when they had OERs as white students did when using commercial textbooks. Interestingly, again, we see that DFWs, or grades of D, F, and W, decreased for all students, but DFW rates dropped twice as much for students who were Pell eligible. And then finally, we saw the withdrawals from the course decrease substantially for part-time students. So we see here that there are a number of benefits for OERs, and especially for students who are most at risk of having challenges in college. Next slide. Students tend to be more ready for class because there's no paywall. They don't have to go through any barriers to get their course materials. We see across a number of studies better student performance, higher grades, fewer drops and withdrawals, and increased credit load, which means that students can actually graduate faster. It means, again, overall lower financial burden for college. We also see that these benefits are disproportionately aiding students who are first generation, part-time students, Pell eligible students, and students from historically minoritized backgrounds. And as an educator, I can say that I especially appreciate OERs because it means that I can specifically customize my learning materials to fit my course, both in content and in format, which is pretty important for us here up in Alaska. And I'll turn it back over to Dr. Redmond.
Great, thank you. Just real quick with me. So based on all of these benefits that Dr. Howard is discussing, in my advanced nutrition class, I wanted to find a solution using OER to address nutritional genomics. I didn't want my students to have to purchase an almost $400 textbook, so I wanted to turn to OER. And it turns out, through my searching, there's very few high-quality OER in the field. I could find resources for the basics, like biology, chemistry, physics, etc., but not for the nutrition-specific courses or higher-level courses, like medical nutrition therapy, food service management, etc. I do want to highlight one excellent source that I did find. This is from the University of Hawaii Food Science and Human Nutrition Program, an entire open textbook available on their website, but it just is human nutrition, which is excellent. It's very well done, but human nutrition is a more general introductory course to dietetics and nutrition, and I still couldn't find anything to help me in my specific subject of nutritional genomics. So I looked into having students create their own OER via Open Pedagogy, which Dr. Howard will explain next.
Absolutely. And I will admit that I am in the same boat as Dr. Redmond. I have a niche specialty area for which there is very little OER. So I've done a little bit more in the realm of something called open pedagogy. This is a hard term to pin down because there's a few different definitions of it, but the spirit of open pedagogy is a question of whether students are using OERs as part of their learning and experience in the course. So some questions that are typically associated with open pedagogy are things like, are students being asked to create new artifacts or remix or revise existing OERs? Questions like, does this new artifact that our students create, does this project that our students do for the course, does it have value beyond simply the assignment that we're asking the student to do? That is, does it live on? Does it have a life? Are students publicly sharing those artifacts with their community, with the world? And are students choosing to openly license those new artifacts? We do have, next slide, some emphasis here on moving from what are called disposable assignments. Those are things, for instance, where we ask our students to invest a significant amount of effort, we mark it, we give them their grade, and then we just kind of throw it away. In the transition to open pedagogy, we're kind of moving into this realm of a more renewable assignment, the idea that that assignment then has new life and it can improve the quality of the educational environment. Let me give you a couple of examples. Next slide, please. So on a very simple level, on a very small scale, Rajiv Jangiani asked his students to, rather than take a kind of formative assessment like we might do in courses, he asked his students to create or write multiple choice questions, to review questions of peers, and to provide constructive feedback. The students were writing questions, testing their knowledge, taking other people's questions and answering them, citing their sources, and learning new material in a more interactive way. The product here then created a kind of test bank that could be reused for future semesters and for future students. Next slide. We see that pioneers like Robin DeRosa have worked with her former students and with colleagues to put together resources like the Open Anthology of Early American Lit. So students are, as part of their course projects, finding sources that then can go into a repository or a book. And DeRosa demonstrated that this product could actually be used in lieu of a traditional reader, saving students $85 per student per semester. And then finally, one of my favorite examples is on the next slide, which is students in an introductory writing class at Queens College working together to create a peer-reviewed journal article on the theme of the purpose of education. And the students not only wrote the article, but actually had the article published. So we're talking about freshman students creating peer-reviewed literature, which is amazing. Next slide. In open pedagogy, we see some very common themes. We see that students are significantly involved in evaluation and curation or production of new learning materials, that they share those materials under an open license, and that those products become part of the fabric of our future courses.
Thank you, Dr. Howard. And hopefully everyone has picked up on this so far that, OER, and especially student-generated OER, is going to be very high engagement for the student. And so back to my example of my advanced nutrition class, my goal was to increase student engagement, also keeping in mind decreasing cost to student. And so I looked to student-generated OER. This was in my 400 level advanced nutrition course. And again, I wanted it to be on the topic of nutritional genomics. If you're not familiar with this, you don't really have to know about it to understand this talk, but it is the intersection of genetics, diet, and disease risk. And it is particularly difficult for dietetics students. It's, again, rapidly evolving, new material, new field. In addition, our students do not take, they're not required to take an actual genetics course. So they don't have necessarily the most solid of background going into this topic. Our accrediting organization establishes core knowledge requirements for all dietetics programs, and these are relatable to student learning outcomes. And this is a screenshot from the syllabus of my advanced nutrition course. I include these core knowledge requirements in all of my syllabi, and so you can see here that one of those KRDNs, or core knowledge requirements, is describe the basic concepts of nutritional genomics. And I then link that to the learning activities the students will do to achieve that outcome. And prior to this project, it was just, information from the lecture and a discussion board post, neither of which are particularly engaging. And so here was a good opportunity to insert this OER author project that I came up with. What is that project? Well, the objective was that students would work in groups to develop an OER of their choice on any aspect of nutritional genomics. Now, keep in mind this class is entirely online, so I am asking them to work in groups online. Fortunately, at the 400 level, the students were familiar with each other well enough that they knew each other from other classes, even in the online environment. I did assign the groups, but they at least, they were comfortable with each other at this point. Students were allowed to use any format. So their OER, their final product, it could be a PowerPoint, it could be a voice thread, an infographic, a video, a brochure, etc. I left it very open, and I was intentional about that. I didn't want to provide much structure. I wanted them to be creative. And I emphasized to them that as they are creating this OER, to keep in mind what the purpose of OER is, that they would be creating materials that would not only help them to engage with the content and learn the content on a deeper level, but also what they were creating could be used for next year's class. And even beyond that, if they share it publicly on a website like Creative Commons, for example, it could be used for any dietetics and nutrition student across any institution. So that helps them to have a little more buy-in to the project, that realization that, oh, someone besides the instructor is going to see this. If I'm going to make an infographic, I better make it good. So the deliverables that I outlined for my students, they had to turn in a topic, an outline, a first draft, and a final project. This is a screenshot from my Blackboard course in which I introduced the project. One thing that I do for all of my assignments is that I record a video, a PowerPoint and a video. And this goes back to what I said at the beginning about how many of our students spread out across the state can't always log on to a synchronous class session or like an open session where they can ask questions about the assignment. And so I try to do a video that anticipates some of the questions they might have and answers them in a format that students can come back and refer to this if they need to throughout the process. And in this video, I introduced OER, what is it? And then I also went into the assignment instructions in detail. And those instructions, this is what I provided for them. This was also attached. If you saw earlier on this screen, you can see there's some files attached at the top. This is one of those files. This was the formal instruction document for the project. And I made it brief, again, leaving a lot of room for creativity and putting their own spin on things. But one thing I want to highlight is that I did create opportunity for feedback along the way, making it so that they hand in their topic, they hand in their outline, their first draft, and their final draft. I also was very clear on the point system that I would be using to evaluate these different deliverables. My students have made it very clear to me that they like knowing how much their assignments are worth and along every step of the way. And I bet your students are no different. They keep a very good track of their grades, especially in a course that could prevent them from graduating. So I was very clear to them from the beginning, the point values as well. And so again, as a reminder, my students were choosing any topic related to nutritional genomics, and then they were creating an OER product, whatever that might be, related to that topic, with the idea that at the end, when all the class is over, that it could be shared with other students, both in this class in the future, but also across other institutions. And I have some examples to show, which I'm very excited about. And admittedly, I am implementing this semester, so I don't have final products to share with you, but this is an example of one of the group's first drafts. As you can see, they selected a topic, which is vitamin D, as it relates to genetic single nucleotide polymorphism variants and the role in nutrigenomics. But I was very impressed to see this when I opened up their assignment to provide feedback. They met all the assignment criteria, put their own spin on it, made it creative, made it visually attractive, provided their references. And one additional slide you may not have if you've downloaded those slides because I just added it. But this was another example of a draft, which I was just thrilled to see when I opened it. But here, this group has decided they were going to make a brochure, and that this brochure was going to be on diabetes, our genes, and the polyphenols that improve their function. And I just thought this was so beautiful and included such wonderful information. And so they're creating something that's attractive and that they feel comfortable sharing with other people. And you can see on the left panel, like in the center of the left panel, down at the bottom, there's that Creative Commons license there. And that's key to OER in indicating that other people can use this, they can modify it. The only thing that you have to do is attribute it to its original creator. And so that's what that license means. So the products are beautiful, but really what we're concerned with is, are we improving their learning? Are we improving their engagement with the content? And I want to touch on these three types of engagement that we're familiar with. First, learner-to-learner engagement. I think this was accomplished through the group work. They were required to complete and manage group work on their own. I didn't do it for them. So they had to determine, when are we meeting? Are we doing a phone call? Are we doing a Zoom meeting? How are we going to get this done? So this encourages leadership and teamwork. We also had learner-instructor engagement. This was accomplished through that formative assessment along the way when they handed in the topic, the outline, the first draft, etc., and I gave feedback. So this encouraged interaction between myself and the students. Finally, we have the learner content engagement, which is really the goal of this project was to increase that type of engagement. And creating that OER and making it publicly available required them to engage with it on a deeper level. Again, that accountability, that deeper buy-in, that, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to share this with other people. It better be good. And then it also removed that frustration that's associated with the creation of what Dr. Howard introduced earlier, that disposable assignment, where students almost feel like it's busy work and no one's ever going to look at it. And what's the point in making it high quality work if they're just going to throw it away? There were, of course, some barriers to implementation. The first one was helping the students to understand OER. It's not familiar to all students. It's not even familiar to all faculty. So the first challenge was simply introducing it and helping them to see the value of it. And that is one of the things I accomplished in that video that I referred to earlier. There was also a fear of creativity. I mentioned I was intentionally vague in my requirements for their final product. And that's because I wanted them to be creative. But some students really like to have a lot of direction so that they can just check boxes and make sure that they meet all the requirements. And I understand that, but I really wanted to push them out of their comfort zone with this and have them be a little more flexible. Also, in this particular example, some students have alluded to me this perception of being test subjects for this project. The students talk, they know that this is the first time that this project is being implemented in this class. And they didn't say this in a negative way, but just kind of laughingly, oh my goodness, we kind of feel like the test subjects for this. So that was just a little bit of a barrier to me, and something I hope to improve if I choose to do this again in the future, is to help students really understand the purpose of the assignment, that it's not just some big experiment. We do know that it will help with their learning outcomes and their success in the course, and that they shouldn't feel like guinea pigs. There were some pleasant surprises as well. I've had several students comment to me that researching for their OER topic has made them realize just how much interesting information there is on nutritional genomics. So what previously was a very scary topic for them that they didn't understand and that they just kind of had to slug through because they had to, now has piqued some interest, and now they're understanding, oh, this is something that's really interesting. I want to go learn more. And several students have also chosen to do some more research on it. They do have another assignment. They have a research paper assignment completely separate from this. And the topic is not required to be nutritional genomics, but I've had several students say to me that they're now going to do their research project on nutritional genomics because, whatever their group chose might not have been what they were most interested in. So now they're going to go explore it further on their own and turn it in for their research paper. And for me as an educator, when ultimately one of my goals was to improve their understanding of nutritional genomics and meet that core knowledge requirement, this is what I want to see. So they're taking it upon themselves to learn more about it, which will ultimately improve their outcomes. For the last bit of this presentation, I want to focus on some framework, so to speak, of how you might go about implementing OER in your own course. And I have a few steps I want to discuss. Step one, I would really encourage you to identify a subject or a class based on really what subjects are best suited. So if you're looking to implement OER, you might want to consider, again, are you going to use existing OER, or do you want to have your students develop their own? And for the existing OER, it might be better for those core subjects or those basics like chemistry, biology, general nutrition. For developing, you might choose something more subject specific. In our case, it would be those food service management, medical nutrition therapy, but I'm sure you can think of subjects in your discipline that might require students to develop their own because they're a little more specific. And before you implement it, ask yourself, how is OER going to benefit students in this subject? For me, it was knowing that it would improve engagement and therefore improve that core knowledge requirement, but also decrease cost. We want to make sure we're not implementing something just because it's fun and interesting and new and we want to play around with it. We want to make sure that it actually will support the students in their learning and their success. And to help you think through that, I would advise you to outline some goals, some SMART goals. And for me, my goal that was measurable is that I wanted to improve my students' scores on their midterm and final exam questions that were related to nutrigenomics. And so when I thought about it like that, that really identified to me, okay, how can I improve those scores? Well, I can introduce an OER project here. Related to that with step 2 is course alignment mapping. And ultimately mapping our student learning outcomes to the assessment measures and identifying opportunities for OER. And in my example, the student learning outcome was describe the basic concepts of nutritional genomics. And the assessment methods traditionally were just the midterm exam and the final exam. And those are both summative, and there was really no formative assessment to help them get there. And so that, to me, stood out as an opportunity to introduce OER. And when we think about quality matters and the standards in the rubric, we can think about standards 3, 4, and 5. Standard 3 is making sure your assessment and measures line up together. Standard 4, making sure your instructional materials support your outcomes. And then standard 5, having those learning activities and learner interaction emphasized. And so I really looked at all 3 of those and tried to address those in this one OER author project. Step 3, I would encourage you not to go this alone. Identify resources on your campus that could be of help, starting with the library. And I've done a little screenshot here of the consortium library here at UAA. We have a whole section dedicated to OER, finding OER, digging deeper. Are you wondering if it is OER? Here's some questions that can help you. So the library is a wonderful resource. It's to support you in your journey of adapting OER. Also, many schools have instructional designers. UAA has many, as you can see here. We are so fortunate to be supported in this way. But I encourage you to reach out to those folks and they can help you to identify those opportunities where OER can add value to your course. Finally, we have e-learning, which for us is a lot of support for faculty, but can also help support our students. So as faculty, if I wanted my students all to create a video as their OER project, I could reach out to e-learning and they could help me to do that and supply resources for my students. So I am not trying to do this by myself. I am looking for an existing support network. For step 4, we want to identify existing OER, but also evaluate the quality of that OER. To help in identifying existing OER, we can look in repositories and we can also just search for different resources. And I've listed here a couple of different ways in which you can do that, different search engines that you can use to find open OER. But one of the common criticisms that OER receives is, how do we know that it's quality if anyone can create it and share it? And that's a valid concern, but one that we can be aware of as educators and creators of OER, and understanding that OER is modifiable, it's editable, it's also rapidly evolving, and if there are errors, they are usually corrected. So if somebody was to publish OER and then another expert came in and really felt that it needed to be changed or updated or corrected in some way, they can do that because it is modifiable. And so when you're evaluating the quality of your OER, you want to consider things like, is it clear, comprehensive, and readable? Is the content and have technical accuracy? Is it correct? Is it valid? Is it in fact adaptable? We want to also be thinking about the appropriateness of the OER. For example, in your subject, would it be appropriate to adopt a full OER textbook, or would it be better just to do something like I've done here with an assignment to address one particular learning outcome? And finally, one big thing that we really, all of us should have on our radar, especially as I think across the country now, we're all transitioning to online to adapt to our current circumstances, is accessibility. And this isn't something that we can forget about when we're creating OER. It really needs to be at the forefront of our thinking. So accessibility in, you know, is there alternate text for all the images? Is the font clear? Is it the appropriate font, the appropriate color? So considering as you're creating OER or finding OER to use and adapt in your course, definitely take those accessibility standards into account. Finally, step 5, I would encourage everyone to really just take it one step at a time. Don't try to revamp the entire course all at once. I know from my own personal experience as I was thinking about ways to incorporate OER into my course and improve student engagement, it's tempting to just want to redo everything, and you get carried away and you see all these really cool examples of OER and you want to do all of it. But one, that's overwhelming for you as faculty, but also it's overwhelming for the students. As I mentioned earlier, this is very new for a lot of them, and it can also be kind of scary if they don't really understand OER, or you know, maybe they're someone who has that criticism of, you know, is it reliable, is it valid? So we really want to take baby steps and also allow opportunity for student feedback. In my course, I at the end will have an opportunity for students to anonymously share via their course evaluations what they really thought of this OER project. Um, I'm anticipating positive and negative feedback. I think several students have enjoyed it from what I've been able to gather so far, but I think there were, you know, some negative thoughts as well. And I shared some of those with you that, you know, some of them felt like test subjects, or, you know, they were scared of the openness of it, the creativity that I was asking of them. But, you know, allowing that feedback and being receptive to that sometimes constructive criticism will help me as an educator to adapt and improve as I carry this project on into future classes. And I think, you know, we've really wrapped up here. We went a little bit quicker than we intended, but we are happy to take questions at this time.
Leslie and Veronica, thank you. That was a great presentation. Looks like from the comments, maybe you did such a good job that you didn't leave room for questions.
I seriously doubt that, but
well, somebody said you did a pretty thorough job, so.
If anyone can think of any questions, anything at all.
Here we go. There we go. Yeah, so say we have plenty of time for questions. So there is one here. Have you heard of the outcomes from other institutions who have used student-created OER?
I think Dr. Howard could probably answer this question better than I can, so I'm going to defer to her on this.
Absolutely. So it depends on the institution, and it depends on what kind of scholarship and of teaching and learning that those organizations are using. For the most part, those that report on their open projects, those open pedagogy projects, tend to find that the students are very satisfied with the performance. And what we see in the literature overall is that for the most part, moving to an open resource generally doesn't hinder student learning. For instance, as Dr. Redmond mentioned, I do an open pedagogy project in one of my senior level courses in behavior analysis, and the projects that students create become resources for the students in the course behind them. So students who are joining for that first time in the field. You know, we believe that by teaching the material, you learn it you learn it better, and students learn better from one another often. The examples are more relevant, they're more salient than sometimes the examples we can give them. So literature is mixed. It can generally, what you're seeing are the folks who did well with it, and for the most part, people who do open pedagogy seem to be very happy with the outcomes, and students tend to be pretty happy with the experience as well.
I do see a question in the chat. Are you putting the new OER material on any OER repositories like OER Commons?
I have indicated in the instructions to my students that they should share on Creative Commons or OER Commons, but I have made it optional. You know, I did encourage them that this is the whole point of the project, is that we do want to share, we do want to make it open, but I didn't want anyone to feel uncomfortable with that if they really didn't want to do it. So while I have encouraged them to do so, I've also said, you know, if you really have an issue with this, that's okay, we'll work around it. But I do encourage them to do that. And I think Dr. Howard does the same with her students.
Yeah, and for the most part, we need to honor the fact that this is our students' intellectual property, not our own. And we should never force a person to adopt a license that they don't want to for their materials. I encourage students to make their materials publicly available, but if they want to slap an all rights reserved license on there and keep it private for the course, that's the option that my students have. I want to give them maximum flexibility.
I think there's another question about other instructors at our institution adopting OER as a result of your work. Not as a result of my work yet, since I'm so new to it, but definitely Dr. Howard, who is our OER guru and proponent of OER at UAA, I think, well, she's the one who inspired me. So I would answer yes, that other educators at UAA are doing this because of her work.
I should be very clear that I am one of many very hardworking people. I am the chair of our textbook affordability committee, and we do have a intensive faculty training group called the Textbook Transformation Fellows, where we help and guide faculty through the process of redesigning their courses or adopting open educational resources or open access materials in lieu of commercial products. We have found that in the past 4 years, we've saved students about $500,000 so far, and those are just in the courses that we know about.
That's impressive. Okay, do we have any other last minute questions? Okay,
I do apologize. I see someone's comment. It was a fire hose of info, and it was. I agree. You know, we're trying to pack a lot into a short time, but you know, I encourage you to jot down our email addresses here and reach out if you have any questions, because you're expressing something that, you know, several students express too, that it is a lot to take in if you're just learning about it from the beginning, and so that can be a frustration, you know, or a barrier to implementation. So I do encourage you to take some time, email us, and yes, I will try to go back to the download link. I don't know if I still have control of the slides here. Let's see. I do.
And I also put the link there if you want to
There we
download the presentation and retain it for your records in the chat box.
okay, wonderful. Well, I have a link that I'll be posting in the chat for you for evaluations for the session. We welcome your feedback on all of our sessions today. Veronica and Leslie, thank you so much for presenting today. I know that things have been a little different than we originally planned, but everyone's doing a great job of adapting, and we appreciate all those who managed to attend today too, in spite of all the responsibilities that you're dealing with back at your institutions. So have a wonderful afternoon. We'll see you all at the next session.
Great. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.